from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and the phone number, if you want to join us, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337-833-4VALDEZ. And I want to get into a few things tonight. We're going to have some discussion on Space Force. We're going to have some discussion on a really interesting story about Steelman Stalkowski. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And, of course, what type of ties Kamala Harris, or as I say, Kamala Harris, has with slave labor in Chinese companies that produce energy-related stuff, like solar firms and whatnot. So I want to talk about all those things. But first, a couple of quick headlines, because there's a few things that are going on that I think are of note, and I want to talk about them. Now, big news today is that most people, pollsters, polling people, are thinking that Trump is being so underestimated in the polls that it's very likely that he's actually way ahead of where he is, and he's up in a lot of these polls. So that's something we're going to dig into in a little bit. I also wanted to get into this right here. Let me see here. Immigration, we'll get to that in a second. There was also a quote from the 60 Minutes last night, and maybe Count Delacula can cue it up. It's Tim Walz reacting to I forget the guy's name a million times already, but the interviewer from 60 Minutes, forgive me, I'm just drawing a blank on his name, Bill Whitaker. And he asks Walz whether he can be trusted or not. I'm not sure if we have that one. But he goes through this back and forth, and I want to play that one for you because I think it's an embarrassment. I mean, listen to what he says. Check this out.
In your debate with J.D. Vance, you said, I'm a knucklehead at times. And I think you were referring to the time that you said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square unrest when you were not.
Yeah.
Is that kind of misrepresentation, isn't that more than just being a knucklehead?
I think folks know who I am, and I think they know the difference between someone expressing emotion, telling a story, getting a date wrong rather than a pathological liar like Donald Trump.
But I think it comes down to the question of whether you can be trusted to tell the truth.
Yeah, well, I can. I think I can. I will own up to being a knucklehead at times, but the folks closest to me know that I keep my word.
All right. Well, I don't know what's scarier, that he says, yeah, I think I can. Imagine you go to a surgeon and say, doctor, can I trust you to complete this surgery safe and sound? And he says, yeah, I think I can. What? I don't know if that's the scary part or if the scary part is when he says that he keeps his word. What is his word? That he's making friends with school shooters? There's a few things that we can trust Governor Don Rickles to do. We can trust him to let Minnesota burn when BLM is rioting. We can trust him to put tampons in the boys' bathroom. We can also trust him to be in Tiananmen. Maybe. Right? Obviously, we can't trust him on that one. And that's the whole issue here. He's already developed a track record that is untrustworthy. The media is asking him if he can be trusted. Of course he's going to say yes. The mere fact that the media is asking him suggests that there's a perception already that he's not trustworthy. I think the American people see right through this stuff. I really do. And my hope is that more and more people will. But this Governor Don Rickles stuff, it's not fooling me. I don't see the allure. The mind your damn business. First of all, forgive me for all of my listeners who live in that area of the world. I can't. I don't like his accent. You know, when callers call here from that part of the world, I like their accent. I don't like his. He sounds like a clown. Anyway, Governor Tim Walz, or a.k.a. Don Rickles, right? Is he trustworthy? Throughout the night, feel free to call in on this topic because I want to know your thoughts. I don't trust this guy as far as I can throw him. Somebody, when they say, can we trust you? And you go, yeah, I think I can. Donald Trump. That's his answer to everything. Mind your damn business. I can't stand this guy. I think I stand him less. I'd rather spend an hour with Kamala Harris than an hour with Tim Walz, if that says anything at all. Anyway, last night I meant to mention that I saw the film Transformers over the weekend, and I wanted to get to that last night in the midnight hour, and it escaped me. So I'm going to try and get to that today. Hopefully I remember, or you guys can remind me. And something else I wanted to say. Oh, there was a story on Diddy, Sean P. Diddy Combs, and he's actually getting sued by a narco trafficker because of I guess, a decrease in sales because he's been arrested. They're not selling as many drugs. And I believe that was a real story. It wasn't like Babylon Bee or anything. I want to get into that in a little bit as well. But something that happened on Friday, just before that, I wanted to talk about yesterday, but we'll get to it today because there's so much going on, honestly, was some comments that former President Trump made at one of his rallies. And I thought this was a noteworthy thing to say because there's a lot of talk, right? I get all the news. I look at the fake news. I look at what I think is the real news. I look at everything. I check out these off-the-wall conspiracy websites. I do it all. I like to know what's going on. I listen to what everybody has to say. And, you know, I work my sources. You know, I spent years as a associate producer on a big show, and I made a few friends, and I know a few people, and I got a few numbers in my Rolodex. So, you know, I call people, or they text me, and we talk. And I get the scoop on a lot of things. Some of them come on here as guests. And ultimately, I try to get all of that information and come up with my own opinion. So I can say, all right, this is what I believe based on this, based on my own experiences, based on my conversation with so-and-so. And at Trump's rally on Friday, he mentioned that we should have a task force that cracks down on wokeness in the military and in our federal government. And I thought that was an excellent idea. Just like I thought it was an excellent idea that he was going to bring on Elon Musk to reduce the size of government and eliminate waste and promote efficiency. And the person that he chose at the rally on Friday was somebody we've had on this program before. He's actually the very first veteran of the United States Space Force. And I thought, man, that's pretty cool that Trump kind of shouted him out that way. So I want to have a conversation with him. But I want you to hear what Trump had to say at the rally. Listen to this.
My name is Matt Lohmeier. I was an Air Force F-15 pilot, and I was a commander in your newly created U.S. Space Force. I am also the first veteran of the Space Force because under the Biden-Harris regime, I was fired from my command and lost my pension for criticizing DEI trainings that were rampant in the military. Those trainings are still dividing our troops, and thank you for saying you would fire those few woke generals who are a big problem.
Big on.
I'm going to suggest that it might, in fact, require ongoing oversight and a persistent, consistent, watchful eye within the Pentagon to ensure this monster never returns to the Defense Department. Will you consider establishing a special task force, office, or position to ensure that these monsters never return to the Defense Department?
You know what I'll do? And I'm pretty good at this stuff. Sometimes you get it wrong. I'm going to put you on that task force. I think it's good. Not going to do better than him. I'll put you on. Make sure you give the name. Thank you. It's beautiful. Right? I have your approval.
Yes, sir.
I have your approval. We're not going to get better than him.
Well, there you have it. Trump saying we're not going to get better than him. Now, that is, of course, Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeier. And Matthew Lohmeier being the first veteran of the Space Force. He's been on the show before. And when I saw this, I thought, let me see if we can get him on the phone. So I'm going to see if our guys can reach out to him. And if he'll join us tonight, I'd love to have a conversation with him about that. We did talk about his book the last time he was on. And we're going to talk about this anti-woke task force to watch out for generals that are pushing the DEI agenda. If that happens, I will bring him to you live. But a couple other things I want to get into are this conversation that's going on. And there's a lot of conversation going on regarding the 60 Minutes interview and the hurricane and a lot of other things. So I want you to stick with me. We're coming right back. The phone number, if you want to join us, is 833-482-5337. We'll be doing calls in about 20 minutes or so. I just got to get through some things. And keep it locked right here. We're kicking it off, and it's going to be a great conversation tonight. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So over the summer, Joe Biden was talking about the strength of diversity, equity, and inclusion when he was talking about Kamala Harris, who many are criticizing as being a DEI hire herself. And this is what he had to say.
They're trying to erase black history. We're going to write black history because it's American history. It's American history. Together we make history, not erase it. To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and that's not kidding, the core strengths of America. That's why I'm proud to have the most diverse administration in history. It taps into the full talents of our country. And starts at the top with the vice president.
Starts at the top with the vice president, the most diverse blah, 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 in history. Anyway, that's Joe El Baboso Biden. Now, this seems to be a mantra, and I guess this is one of those things we could agree to disagree on, right? Some people believe that that's really what we need to do is it doesn't matter how good you are at your job. It matters how diverse you are in your job. I personally don't believe that that's the way to go. I think you want the surgeon to work on you that's going to be the best surgeon, not the most gay or the most Puerto Rican or the most black or the most white, right? I don't think anybody cares about those things. They care about the top of their class, the person who's the best at this particular surgery. At least so I think. Maybe I'm jaded in my thinking that I want the best surgeon. But this has plagued our society. It's plagued our government for sure. And a while back, we had Matthew Lohmeier on, Lieutenant Colonel from the Space Force, who was terminated because he spoke out against the wokeism of the generals in the military and the direction they were going in. And he even wrote a book about it. And that was the same commander in the Space Force that Trump was just talking about on Friday at the rally. We played you that audio clip before the break. And I asked our guys in the studio if they could track him down so he could be on the show, and they were successful. Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeier, welcome back, sir.
Happy to be here with you, Rich. Your guys were successful tracking me down.
Mission accomplished. So
yeah.
I love what you guys were talking about, you and President Trump. I think that's so important. And I'm going to set the stage for you. Bear with me if you can, because I talk to a lot of people. And, you know, with everything you hear, when there's chatter, when there's people talking, you know, some of it's true, some of it's fiction, some of it's crazy, some of it's not. And a lot of people rely on the United States military. And I think we should, right? It's the best in the world, in my opinion. And we want to keep it that way and make sure that it remains that way. But I think we lose some of that edge when we allow so much wokeness into every area of our federal government, not just the military. They did it in FEMA, right? And they were talking about in FEMA saying we need to have, you know, a commitment to LGBTQ. And I guess that's cute if you like. But right now, the people that are most affected by this storm, they don't care about the LGBTQ-ness of anybody in FEMA. And I was doing a TV show earlier today, and I was on with a guy who was an Obama administration official, and he was a gay guy. And he was saying, I don't even understand what that means. He said, because he lives in the South. And he was saying that ultimately people are drowning, people are underwater, there's muddy water everywhere, flood water is up to people's necks, and they don't care about DEI. What they care about is being safe. And I think this is very similar to the message that you were preaching, saying that they're softening and hurting and destroying our military from within. So in a minute and a half, until we got to take a pause and then come back, tell us what's going on. Is this going to actually happen?
Yeah, like you said just a minute ago about those who are suffering from floods in the aftermath of a hurricane, I often say to audiences to whom I speak, the last thing any of our troops think when they are deployed downrange is, man, I sure wish I had another diversity and inclusion training before I came. I mean, it's like the furthest thing, or a transgender sensitivity training, or
right.
to be exposed to more LGBTQ activism in the workplace. I mean, our troops are constantly beset by distractions because of ideologues in the workplace and because of the policy and the policy-induced climate that has come over the last 4 years out of this administration. Will this thing actually happen? And this thing that you're referring to is a Trump task force, an anti-DEI task force that I suggested to President Trump last Friday in Fayetteville, North Carolina at a town hall. I actually, and your listener is going to be interested in this, I didn't seek the opportunity to be there on stage. I really believe God orchestrated that opportunity, and they gave me a scripted question to ask the president while I was on stage. But I departed from the script and spoke from the heart to the man, which I could tell he was judging in the moment. It was a sincere statement and a pleading with him that, hey, we really need to get on top of this problem by establishing constant oversight. And he, in the moment, with a gut reaction, and it was a good gut reaction, said, I'm going to put you on that task force, and we're going to fix this problem in the military. So, yeah, if Trump gets in office, and heaven help us, that's what he said to me after the event was over, he'll end up back in office, and we'll get it fixed.
Amen. Praise God. Hallelujah. I would love for that to happen. Folks, we're on with retired Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeier, who was ousted from the Space Force. And we're going to come right back with him, continue that story and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. It's me, Rich Valdez, coming back with Matthew Lohmeier.
America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
I'm pretty good at this stuff. Sometimes you get it wrong. I'm going to put you on that task force. I think it's good. Not going to do better than him. I'll put you on. Make sure you give the name. Thank you. Beautiful. Right? I have your approval.
Yes, sir.
I have your approval. We're not going to get better than him.
We're not going to get better than him. And the him, of course, is Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeier from the United States Space Force. He was ousted by the Biden regime for telling the truth. And you talked about your book the last time you were with us. Matthew Lohmeier, and I'd like you to just give us a little bit of exactly how that went down again, and what you're up to now, what we can expect between now and hopefully what is your new position as the DEI czar.
Yeah, I like that title, DEI czar. I took command of a Space Force unit in the summer of 2020, in the couple of months after George Floyd's death. I saw the same activism in the military and at my base and from my base commander that the American people saw in the news headlines that were stomping out windows on police cars and whatnot, and anti-American rhetoric and so forth. So speeding forward to the next spring, I wrote and published a book called Irresistible Revolution. I was fired from my command in May of 2021 under the Biden regime for having written that book, which is truly a nonpartisan work. It's an expose of Marxist ideology, critical race theory, and the divisive and merit-destroying impact of DEI and its agenda. And I separated that fall without my pension in 2021, and for the last 3 years I've been speaking around the country about that issue in particular and a number of other security issues. But I've got a film I've been working on for the past 12 months as well called Against All Enemies that's going to be coming out in the weeks ahead, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a big film, I think, and I hope it'll be impactful, and it's really dovetailing nicely with right as we were about to make this film public and release the trailer for it. I had this encounter with President Trump last Friday where he offered to me to be on a task force to be a DEI czar of sorts, as you've said. And so it's actually both a blessing for the film, but also introduce some hiccups. And so it might delay the timing of the release just depending on how the election goes and what happens with that position.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the film a little bit. I'm interested. I love film.
Yeah.
And what inspired the project? What made you get into that medium? And you're doing speeches, you're writing books, and how did that come about?
It came about not because I sought the opportunity. In fact, there were some independent film producers in Nashville, Tennessee, who reached out to me in about a year and a half after I'd been out of the military. They said they had discovered my book and seen some of my online media appearances. They read my book and then read it again and said, we want to make a film about this guy's story, about the book, and hopefully to kind of tell two stories. One is this guy's outstanding military career. I was the #1 officer in the Space Force for my peer group. In fact, President Trump doesn't yet know this, but it's likely that after the election, had the 2020 election turned out differently, I'd have been headed to Washington, D.C. to have been the nuclear football carrier, first from the Space Force to join his team. And of course, the outcome was different, and I was too straight, too white, too conservative, I guess, to go do a job like that for President Biden. And so, they reached out to me asking if I would do a film with them, and after much deliberation, I agreed to that. So we spent the last year on the road filming in places like Minneapolis at the George Floyd Shrine that's there in downtown Minneapolis. We've been to Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C., have footage from my congressional testimony in January earlier this year, and filmed in my hometown of Tucson, Arizona, and other places I'd been stationed. And I think it's a dramatic story. It's going to make the American people happy for the good men and women that serve in uniform and grateful, and also angry as hell as they see all in one place the madness and the nonsense that has been so invested with taxpayer dollars in the form of diversity and inclusion trainings and transgenderism and all of the woke, colloquially we say woke stuff of our military that's been such a disappointment to those who have just wanted to serve their country.
All right. I love it. I can't wait to watch it. Now, let's talk about some of the news that's out there. Bob Woodward is back with what some are saying is a blockbuster. I think it's the same old trope they have against Trump. Trump secretly sent COVID tests to Putin during 2020 shortage, new book says. It's funny. It comes
he's pretty
up
good
now.
at that, Bob Woodward.
20-something, right? Yeah, he's great. It's always 20-something days before Election Day. What a hack. If I had to guess, this guy's a spy. He's not a journalist or anything else like that. But looking at this situation, there's lots of opinions. People have all sorts of opinions on Ukraine and Russia and Hamas, Iran and Israel. Where do you weigh in on some of those conflicts, and what's your recommendation on putting them to bed?
Yep, great question. Difficult to answer in a short setting, so let me do my best and say my opinion about those matters is shaped largely from the study of history every bit as much as it is from the study of current events. I don't just form my opinions about those things by looking at news headlines or the latest conspiracy theory on social media. I use that term deliberately. There's plenty of it these days, and I'm happy with a good conspiracy, but there's a lot of bad information out there, and so I'm a very traditional stand with Israel viewpoint. In fact, I think there's a very complex history between Putin and Russia and Ukraine, in fact, although war in all of its forms is terrible. But here's my prescription for solution. For all of the conflict we see in the world, it's no coincidence that a very weak image of the United States under the current regime, the Biden-Harris regime, has left our enemies emboldened and our allies afraid and concerned. And I think that we wouldn't be in many of the messes that we're in today had we had a different commander-in-chief, a different United States military image and optic and strength. And we didn't have a botched Afghanistan withdrawal. We didn't have a weak border where we've altogether voluntarily forfeited our territorial integrity and our political sovereignty. All of that sends the wrong messaging to both our allies and our enemies on the world stage. And I think it's possible to clean some of that up, even with something as simple as the right administration in place. But I'm not a fool to think that something as deep-seated or deep-rooted as the Israel and Jewish and Arab Muslim cultural and religious conflict that's been going on for centuries is just simply going to go away because you've got a strong commander-in-chief. Those are very complex issues, and if you look at the history of those things ever since Israel's been a state, Israel's been attacked by its surrounding Arab Muslim neighbors, and I don't think that's ever going to change. And so I do have some more drawn-out opinions about all of those things, but I do think that the main solution is peace through strength. We need to be a more impressive country. We need more impressive leadership, and we need a new commander-in-chief.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And that's really kind of, I think, the angle I was looking for is a lot of this stuff, you know, I was a kid, and there was a barber shop that I used to go to, and I eventually worked at, actually, and they sold drugs outside. There was a cop, a guy named Sergeant Callahan, not Dirty Harry, but a real Sergeant Callahan. And everybody knew this guy, and all the drug dealers would disappear when he came around. They were very ballsy when other cops passed by. They didn't care. They were very just really filled with a lot of hubris. But this particular cop, he came around and they disappeared. And I always thought, wow, they knew he meant business, one way or the other. You know, skulls were getting cracked and whatnot. And that's the reality of everything in life, in my opinion. Whether you're president, whether you're the CEO, whether you're whatever. If people take you seriously and there's a healthy dose of respect/fear, they're going to act accordingly. And I think that's ultimately the peace through strength mantra is, you know, fool around and find out. Do you think that's inappropriate?
No, I don't. I ought to rewatch Dirty Harry. It's been like 2 decades since I've seen it, and we need a little dose of Dirty Harry in our lives. But no, I think that's absolutely right. It may not be the way in which any of us as individuals trying to be decent humans going about conducting our business, but when it comes to statecraft, when it comes to a country's image and shoring up one's political sovereignty, that's absolutely the way to do it. It's peace through strength. You prepare through strength and developing your readiness. I'm speaking in military terms now. Your economic might, your energy independence, all of those things that are and should be the chief policy debate points in these debates. Are the ways in which any country develops, builds its strength, and establishes itself on the world stage as one of the grand actors. And we've done that exceptionally well, particularly since the end of World War II. And it's been undone rather quickly. It's been devastating how quickly a country is able to unravel. And I quite frankly am of the opinion that we've got one last really good shot to try and get ourselves on a recovery trajectory now, or forever be doomed. And that's not hyperbole.
Yeah, I hear that, brother. Folks, we're on with Matthew Lohmeier. He's the very first veteran of the United States Space Force, lieutenant colonel in the Space Force. And he is the executive vice president of STARS. He's the author of Irresistible Revolution, Marxism's Goal of Conquest and the Unmaking of the American Military. I recommend getting a copy of the book for yourself and one to give away. And Matthew Lohmeier, please let everybody know, how do they keep up with you? How do they follow you? Website, socials, let them know where to go.
Thanks. Yeah, my website's MatthewLohmeier.com. You'll learn about my forthcoming movie there in the days ahead. And my X account is Matthew Lohmeier, at Matthew Lohmeier, and I'll be posting there about the film when it comes out. And folks can go follow our work at STARS. It's an education-based nonprofit that focuses specifically on educating people about the Marxist CRT DEI threat within the military, and it's STARS with 2 Rs.us. And it's a fantastic online one-stop shop there for information for folks, and it's a great place to submit information. If you've got emails, pictures of training slides you're getting in the military, the evidence is going to start vanishing once the next administration comes in, so collect it now, take screenshots, save it, send it to stars.us, and it'll be really helpful when we get that new task force stood up.
Outstanding. Well, brother, I want to thank you for being a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and for being with us. Hope to have you back, maybe before Election Day, if you have the time.
Great.
You got it,
That'd
brother.
be great.
Godspeed.
Thank you, Rich.
Yes, sir. And amigos, we're coming right back. We've got your calls and a lot more to discuss. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, but I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. Yeah. The work that we have done, for example, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors is something I care deeply about allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices and bring the cost of prescription medication down for seniors, but my intention is to expand that for all Americans. Mm-hmm. The work we have done to invest in American industries, whether it be in terms of manufacturing and creating almost 800,000 new jobs around manufacturing. Those were all a shared priority.
Shared priority. That, of course, is Kamala Harris. That is the Vice President of the United States. And Kamala Harris, she was on The View. She was on 60 Minutes yesterday. She's making the rounds, getting, taking all the tough questions, right? And what's interesting is she literally pretty much admits here that she wouldn't do anything differently than Biden. Because although she's a different person, she thinks just like Biden. So she would have done the same thing on the economy. She would have done the American Rescue Plan, the Build Back Better craziness, all this stuff that cost us a fortune and triggered inflation like we haven't seen before. She would do it all again. If that doesn't tell you that she's in over her head or that she's just not the brightest, I don't know what does. But let's hit the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to go to, let's see, where do we go? We're going to Hector, Chambersburg, Virginia, listening on WEEU. Go right ahead.
Remember when President Trump took a Sharpie to change? Remember when President Trump took a Sharpie to change the map of where
I remember that being
go?
reported in the media, and they made a big deal about him trying to redo a hurricane pattern and all sorts of craziness about that. And here we are years later in hurricane season and still getting calls about that.
Remember when he asked the generals if they could nuke a hurricane?
All right, let's forget about what I remember. Make your point, sir.
Is there a bigger moron than Trump?
It sounds like you're the biggest moron. You stayed up late and waited a half an hour to talk to me just so I could tell you that you're a moron to your face. Thank you for your call. Let's go to Joseph in Yorktown. Let's see if he's a moron too. Joseph, are you a moron, sir?
Oh my gosh, no, I'm not a moron. Is this Mr. Valdez?
It very well may be.
Oh,
I don't
get to talk to you, Mr. Valdez.
Yeah, I think we've got another moron here. Go right ahead.
For supporting President Trump and supporting our country, because President Trump is amazing. And I just want to tell you, I thank you so much for supporting President Trump. At the end of September, I was driving through Charlottesville to a music festival in Louisville.
Charlottesville.
I heard your voice on the radio for the first time. And it started to rain really hard, and there was a lot of storms. And the only thing that got me through the storm was your broadcast, sir. And I listen to your show every night. And just like you got me through that storm.
Are we screening calls here? Unbelievable. All right. Do you have a point you'd like to make, Joseph?
What you do for our country. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you for supporting our president. And you got me through that storm. He's going to get us through this storm. You know,
listen, it's Jesus that gets you through all the storms. But thank you, Joseph. Shout out to you on a station that I don't believe we're on. Thank you so much, sir. Let us continue. Let's go to a commercial break, and we'll come right back, see if we can find a couple of more trolls out there.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. To the phones we go. Let's see, where do we go? I want to go to Thomas, Palm Bay, Florida, streaming the show. Go right ahead.
Hey, Mr. Valdez, one and honor, big fan.
Thank you, sir.
I have more of a concern. So, so long story short, I'm an owner-operator. Economy's been kicking our butt, but we have a house in Palm Bay. We're doing really good under Trump. After Trump left, the fuel went up, the rates went down. We're barely getting $1 a mile. It used to be $3.50, $4. Big difference. We live in check to check. I guess my only concern is that after the CBS interviews and the Daddy-O interview that she did and the Harris, it's mind-boggling that people are still voting. Are the polls correct? Is it?
I'll give you a little food for thought, Thomas. Do you think it's mind-boggling that there are people that would like to live supported by the government?
I don't know, sir. I don't know what's going on.
No, it's not a trick question. It's just a real one. In reality, I grew up in a poor neighborhood, and I can tell you there were a lot of people that their goal was to get housing in a housing project because they paid like $50 a month in rent, and that was success for certain people. Then there's other people that would rather sleep, I don't know, if wherever they worked or in their car to save money to move forward in life. Different people have different goals. Some people believe that the government is here to be their daddy, and other people believe that they're here to make their own way. And it really comes down to that. So we have a country that's filled with all these diverse people, and ultimately they're going to vote whether we like what they think or not. I would say take it easy, work hard, get a lot of people to vote, but ultimately I think we're going to win this one. I hope I'm right. God bless you, Thomas in Palm Bay, Florida. Thanks for the call. Folks, we're coming right back. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. Don't move a muscle.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Tuesday night, and our phone number is 833-482-5337-8334-Valdez, and I want to get into a few things. In the last hour, I had a good conversation with several callers. Some of them were pendejos, but a couple of them were really good people. And one of them was Thomas. He was calling from Palm Bay, Florida. And he said I believe he said he was a trucker, and he's making less than $1 a mile when it's all said and done because of the way things are going. And he was concerned about how on earth this election could be as close as it is. And I thought to myself, there are truly people that think very differently than others. Right? And it sounds very Kamala Harris of me, right, to say that. And because people think differently, they have different thoughts. But the reality is there are people with very diverse opinions. And I found it interesting because Howard Stern was talking about the same thing in his interview with Que Mala Eres. And he was saying that, he felt that he couldn't understand how close this election is. And it's exactly what Thomas was saying, but from the other perspective. And that's how we get here. It's not always the faulty polls or, unreliable polls. It's the reality that there are people that truly believe this stuff. And Howard Stern is one of those people that believes this stuff. And he's got a huge radio show. And I want you to hear a little bit of what Howard Stern said with his interview with Que Mala Eres today on Sirius XM. Check this out.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there rather than a guy who says, where do I begin? A guy who says he doesn't support Ukraine.
Where do I begin is what Howard Stern says. Where do I begin? He doesn't understand how this election is so close. It's close because there are people that would rather vote for a wall. That's why, like Howard Stern. And listen, I think Howard Stern is a brilliant broadcaster. Guy's broken down more barriers than anything. He's invented the game in many ways, right? The guy's a master of this craft, whether you agree with his politics or not. He's a phenomenal broadcaster. There are people that espouse those opinions. There are people that espouse opinions similar to mine. There are people that believe there's a God, and there's people that don't. There are some people that think it's nice that you believe in your God. I'm going to believe in a lot of the nice things that you believe, like maybe your 10 Commandments, but I'm not going to believe that there's a God. Right? There's a lot of picking and choosing going on, even within people of faith. There are people of faith that say, oh, you know what? Even though the Bible's pretty clear and it says, do not forsake the assembly. They'll go right and say, look, I'm not into organized religion. Yeah. But I like what Jesus said. The picking and choosing will always be there. And that's what makes this country very diverse. We don't have this hegemonic groupthink like they have in many other places that are run by dictatorial regimes, where you're told to believe what the regime tells you to believe. North Korea, China, Cuba. They run the media. They tell you what you need to know in public school. They give you every last bit of everything. That's it. Punto y final. Period. The end. So I just wanted to expound on that just a little bit because I could hear the exasperation in Thomas's voice. He sounds like a really good guy, a patriot that's just trying to make things work in America for himself, for his family, for his fellow man. And he's just, there's a level of incredulity there where he's just like, I don't understand how people could vote for these crazies. But there are crazies out there, and they don't think they're crazy. They think I'm crazy. So that's that. Anyway, There was also another thing I wanted to get into. A couple of things I want to get into real quick before we get into this amazing story that I want to share with you. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was immigration, but I'm going to put a pause on that one until we get to the midnight hour, because that's always fun there. Something else I want to bring up is a story. And it's a story about the Steel Man, Mike Stalkowski. And you may not know who that is, but we're about to find out from Richard Podkowski. He's a retired Secret Service agent, and he's the author of a book called The Walk-On. And I'm excited to hear about this because this sounds like a phenomenal story. Richard Podkowski, welcome, sir.
Well, good evening, Rich, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. It's my honor to be on your show.
Likewise, I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about how a Secret Service agent like you ends up writing a book about someone in the NFL. Tell us how this whole thing comes together.
So I'm actually calling from Los Angeles, where I live now, but I'm a native Chicagoan, and I know the city very well. I know all the corners of the city, the grit and the glitz, where some of the skeletons are hidden, and the quilt, the patchwork quilt that the city is, the city and neighborhoods. And I worked there as a Secret Service agent. I worked there, since I was, a young teenager. And I'm basically a blue collar product of the city of Chicago. Grew up on the South Side. First generation Polish American, and I have a story to tell about a professional. He's a fictional NFL player, not playing for the Chicago Storm, not playing for the Chicago Bears. He plays for a fictional team called the Chicago Storm, and the book really delves into the shattered life of Mike Stalkowski. He's a veteran pro football player, a middle linebacker, NFL Pro Bowler, who has a larger-than-life persona known as the Steel Man. It's kind of a notorious reputation. And he's initially, supported by the media, and toward the end of his career becomes hounded by the media, who really kind of fomented his alter ego, the Steel Man.
And what inspired you to retire from federal law enforcement and tell this story? Where'd the inspiration come from?
So I opened up Pandora's box, Rich, after writing, criminal investigative reports and other reports most of my professional career. I actually started writing fiction back in high school and in college. I went to Loyola University in Chicago. And I have this creative streak, and it's kind of the opposite of what I did professionally, which was obviously a very regimented career as a special agent with the Secret Service. And I started writing the book back in 2007, so actually about 17 years ago. And the story bubbled up at the time when a lot of professional athletes were getting in trouble, a lot of NFL football players. And I was actually coaching my son's youth football team, and I got the inspiration. I have this creative streak, like I said, and I decided to put pen to paper and sit down and write the story.
Outstanding. Well, I want to dig into the story when we come back. Folks, we're going to come right back with Richard Podkowski, retired Secret Service agent and the author of this book, The Walk-On. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I give Secret Service a hell of a lot of credit. These are, look, they've been hit hard because of Butler, because, the building should have been taken care of, and they understand that. But when I went down, I had 4, 5, 6 people right on top of me, and there were bullets flying right over our head. A lot of bullets were flying right over our head. They were not sitting back and taking a pass. They were not saying, well, gee, I'm not going to go over that. That's dangerous stuff. They were on top of me in seconds, and you got to give them a lot of credit.
That, of course, former President Trump praising the Secret Service, and we're on with retired Secret Service agent Richard Podkowski, who's the author of a fictional book, The Walk-On. It's about the gridiron. It's about an NFL player in Chicago, and he kind of started describing the character of Mike Stolowski, the Steel Man. And Richard Podkowski continued to develop this. You told us a little bit why you got into the book, a little bit about yourself. I want to hear about Stolowski and how this story unfolds.
So the whole premise, Rich, is professional athletes live their life in a fishbowl. They're under media scrutiny, all the time. And, you're either the hometown hero and you're praised, or, something bad happens and now you're vilified. You're laid out, you're laid out in the media. So this story, it's got a little bit of everything: romance, tragedy, basically, my protagonist gets a second chance in life. He's got people in his corner that are unlikely. Some are unknown to him. And the story really begs the question at the end, even though he has a shot at redeeming himself, both personally and professionally, is he really redeemed? But the theme of the story is, someone who comes from very humble roots, gains fame and fortune, falls flat on its face. Can they get back up again and get a second chance at life?
And obviously, I mean, this is the story of life, right? For so many people, this falling down, scraping your knee, getting back up. It's the American dream, honestly. It's in many ways the story you've told us about yourself, right? A kid from the south side of Chicago ends up becoming a big Secret Service guy. And that's I think things kids dream of, right? Not every kid achieves. Let's talk about some of the challenges that the Steel Man faces.
So he's at the end of his career. He's in his early 30s. He's he's a Pro Bowler. He's a naturally gifted athlete. He's kind of a bad boy in the NFL. And he's got a bunch of tattoos. He's got, a few different colors in his hair. He rides a Harley motorcycle. He drives a muscle car. And, this persona develops over time. He's a pretty clean-cut kid going into the league. And then, for one reason or another, the media starts to build up this alter ego of his based on his style of play. He's a hard-hitting middle linebacker, and if you know anything about the position, they're the headhunters on the defense, right? They roam the sidelines or roam the field from side to side, making tackles and making ferocious hits. So he's that kind of character. But we pick him up. The book picks him up at the end of his career, where he's actually drinking and drugging to maintain his level of play that he has to. And his life literally, implodes before his eyes the night of the NFC Championship game, where he kills his girlfriend and ends a rookie's career in a horrific car accident after the game. Yeah, so that sets the stage. And then, the story goes on. There's a backstory. We see he had somewhat of a troubled youth, lacked a father figure in his life, and then afterwards, I don't want to give away too much of the story, but he faces the criminal justice system, and he does have people in his corner that ultimately give him some options at a second chance at life.
Well, it sounds like a really riveting story, folks. The book is called The Walk-On. The author is Richard Podkowski, and Richard, how much of this is art imitating life, right? Eventually, this guy, and I don't mean your life, right? But as any law enforcement person, I think, can tell you a million different stories, right? Because you work a good career and you see so much in your career. How much would you say was inspired by things that you encountered along the way?
So, Rich, my story is in my DNA, and some of my friends and even just several readers have said, "Hey, is this story really about you?" So you write what you know, right? When I've taken writing classes, talking to other writers, other authors, they say, "Hey, write what you know." So that's why the book is set in the city of Chicago. Again, it's a city that I know well, the grit and the glitz, because there are, both sides of any big city, whether it's New York, L.A., or Chicago. So I picked up on that, and I fitted my character, my protagonist, into these different scenarios. And, the secondary characters are characters in themselves, but the city of Chicago is actually a character in the story as well.
Outstanding. And any plans to write another book that has to do with some of the crazy things you've seen as a Secret Service agent? I can only imagine you've probably seen some crazy things in your day.
So yes. So I'm not a one-trick pony. Got a little late start out of the box, but I actually finished a manuscript for a holiday romantic comedy, which is total other side of the spectrum. And that's a book that's going to be titled Operation Santa Bear. It's about an L.A. cop and an emergency room nurse who meet at a Christmas charity event and give out little Santa Bears to sick kids. So it's very formulaic, a la Hallmark or, one of the other networks that carry those types of stories. Now, I'm also working on, because people say, "Hey, you're an ex-Secret Service agent, write what you know, give us a good crime story." So I actually have an outline for a crime story loosely based on my investigative background in the Secret Service, because the Secret Service is a dual mission agency. And I've been retired several years, but I did work a good portion of my career on the investigative side. I mean, I did protection. I was at the White House. I was in D.C. almost 10 years. I have a good balance between investigations and protection. But the crime story that I'm going to work on is more on the investigative side. I was a task force supervisor, and we worked domestic and international organized crime cases.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it when it comes out. Richard Podkowski, let everybody know how they find you. What website do they go to get a copy of the book?
Sure. So I have an author's website. It's my name, richardpodkowski.com. The last name is PODKOWSKI.com, and there's all the information is on there. I also welcome the opportunity for podcasts for any listeners that might be listening that have podcasts. And that's probably the best. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and I welcome any and all inquiries.
Outstanding. Richard Podkowski, retired Secret Service agent and the author of The Walk On. I want to thank you for being with us tonight. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Good luck with the next book, and we'll have you back on. Maybe we'll talk about some shop talk.
Okay, very good. Thank
brother.
You so much, Rich.
God bless. Folks, Rich Valdez coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation about how Kamala Harris, and Joel Baboso Biden helped a foreign energy company that has ties to slave labor get preferred status in the U.S. and billions of taxpayer dollars. And I want to talk to Bret Manley. He's the executive director of Energy Fair Trade Coalition, and he's with us to tell us all about it. Bret Manley, welcome.
Hey, Rich. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. Now, this is a story. I know that there's this piece in the New York Post that outlines this whole thing. But this is a story I think we need to know about here. A couple of days ago, Kamala Harris boosted solar firm linked to Chinese slave labor with nearly $2 billion in handouts to set up a U.S. plant. What's going on here, Bret?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And, I mean, you kind of framed it real well there. The complicated issue here is, we're investing a lot of money in this country in green energy, and whether you think that's a good idea or not isn't really the issue here. It's that, a lot of the materials that go into, solar panels or like an EV battery come from parts of the world that, they don't have the best human rights record, right? And in 2021, Congress, in a big bipartisan vote, passed a bill called the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act. And the gist of it is you cannot import products into the United States that come from the Xinjiang region in China, which is where the Chinese Communist Party is engaged in forced labor and some other very problematic human rights practices against the Uyghur Muslim population.
Is that strictly where the Uyghur Muslim population resides, or is there more other groups there as well?
I'm not sure I'd be the best person to answer that question. Yeah. But in terms of how this relates to solar panels, polysilicon in the bill was listed as, a specific area of concern for enforcement. The reason being, a large amount of it comes from the Xinjiang region and is being, mined with forced labor. Polysilicon is the essential element you need for a solar panel, right? Like most people think module or the thing they see on their roof. Inside those modules and those panels are these little wafers, which is what allows you to capture the energy. And that wafer is made from polysilicon.
Yeah, and this is a big deal. I mean, even into the world of jewelry. I mean, people are now selling diamonds and they're putting disclaimers on them saying these are ethically sourced diamonds, meaning they don't have slave labor mining the diamond mines. And a lot of people are very concerned about it, as they should be. But this is something I think that was an afterthought years ago. Why is it that the Biden administration, how do you surmise, or why do you surmise that they're involved in supporting such heinous activity?
Well, I mean, if you look at the timeline, I think there's an explanation that makes sense, at least to me. President Biden was publicly touting company Q-Cells from the White House. A month after that, they hired Danny O'Brien, who was his chief of staff when he was in the Senate, which is when Kamala went and visited the plant in Dalton. Q-Cells subsequently filed a trade case against their competitors, asking for the Department of Commerce to raise tariffs on their competitors. It looks like the Department of Commerce is going to comply with that, and then they get this preferred provider status, which essentially guarantees them, hundreds of millions of dollars in business, right? Because, it's like doing business with the federal government, right? After that, they give them the loan guarantee, $1.5 billion loan guarantee, right? So, you usually don't give a loan guarantee to a company unless they can pay you back. Why do they know they can pay them back? Well, because they just made them a preferred provider, right? So all of that kind of wraps up in is, why would you do this? It's public knowledge. There's been some extensive reporting on this, that Q-Cells sources materials from slave labor, from forced labor in China. There are other options in the United States for people who provide solar panels that don't rely on slave labor. So why would you prop up this company? What makes it especially egregious, right, is because it's the Biden and Harris administration that's supposed to be enforcing the law against importing products tainted with slave labor. But here they are propping up a company that profits from it.
Unbelievable. Folks, again, our guest has got his finger on the pulse of this stuff. He's executive director of Energy Fair Trade Coalition, Bret Manley. And Bret, do you think this is something that if the administration is embarrassed into having to come clean, or if they're even questioned as to why this is going on, that they might curtail some of this behavior, or do they just not care? They're brazen, brash, and going to keep doing it anyway?
Well, I mean, I guess that would require someone to ask them a critical question, right? Part of the issue with
right.
having a press corps that doesn't challenge the administration is you miss some of these things, right? And the sad part is, right, these are tax dollars. So these are this is your hard-earned tax dollar. Your audience's hard-earned tax dollar that's going to prop up a company, again, that profits off of forced labor, while there are alternatives that source from materials in the United States. there really are only so many places in the world that provide the materials for these things. The U.S. is actually one of those places. So we have a market here. It's more expensive is what people will tell you. Well, the reason it's more expensive is because we pay our employees a living wage.
Right. And this has been an ongoing thing, I think, everywhere. This is why people started manufacturing overseas. And this is the problem we run into. When you keep costs so low, you go with this mass production in China or wherever it is, and voila. And I think China's kind of hip to this, realizing there's a lot of people that would rather pay a little bit more for a product that they know is coming from the United States or not from an enemy. But they've gone ahead and bought factories in India and Mexico and other places. So I don't know how we could stay ahead of the curve here.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is what really kickstarted a lot of this, because just the sheer amount of money that we're sending out the door for green energy. And again, our members support green energy, right? But you can care about human rights and green energy at the same time. So what these companies have done is they've tried to hide, the sources of their problematic materials by moving, like you said, production materials to other third-party countries, right? So they'll send the problematic material there, modify it in some way, and then ship from there into the United States and say, oh, we're clean, when in fact they're really not.
Disgusting. Folks, stand by. We're going to come right back and wrap up our conversation with Bret Manley, Executive Director of the Energy Fair Trade Coalition. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
That, of course, Tiananmen Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, also known as Governor Don Rickles, who, in my opinion, can't be trusted to do anything except let Minnesota burn, put tampons in boys' bathrooms, and say he's in Tiananmen. But he's talking about 500-year floods and 500-year this and 500-year that. And he's got a lot to say about climate change. I want to get some reaction from our guest, Bret Manley. He's the executive director of Energy Fair Trade Coalition. Bret Manley, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's very clear at this point, the train's kind of left the station, right, on government spending on green energy technologies. It's obvious we're going to do this. Even states like Texas, a traditionally conservative state, is probably spending more money on green energy, specifically solar, than any other state. These things are happening. The investments are happening. But what we need to be asking ourselves is, what are we actually spending the money on, right? I mean, if you care about climate change because you care about the future of humanity, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be investing in slave labor, right? Because do they not count, right? Why don't the Uyghurs in China count? I've been doing this. I was Capitol Hill for 15 years. So I've worked, under Republican administrations, Democratic administrations, House majority, House minority. These kinds of deals, they don't get made on accident, right? It's not a coincidence, that Biden's former chief of staff is at Q-Cells and they get this sweetheart deal, right? That's not a coincidence. And so, the question we have to be asking when we're spending this kind of money is, why aren't you investing in a company that supports the American tax base, that supports the American supply chain, right? Do we want to be reliant on China for these materials forever, right? Because if at some point, right, if you invest all this money and you never develop, that supply chain here in the United States, then you're relying on them, forever, right? You've seen what's happened in Eastern Europe or in Western Europe with its relying on Russia and oil, right? Like, do we want to rely on the Chinese, who we know, engage in very unethical practices that, violate the laws of, humanity in some cases? And, again, these are tax dollars. Why is the decision made? The only thing I can really think of is political connections. It looks very obvious to me. The timing of these things are not, in my view, coincidental. And I think it's a serious issue.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, Bret, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with all the work that you're doing at Energy Fair Trade Coalition.
Yeah, we have a website, EFTC.org, where we keep folks posted about what's going on. We're trying to get the word out. Unfortunately, what we find out in these situations is, there's a rush, right, for green energy from a lot of people. And the advocates in the green energy space, they don't want to hear about the problems, right? They don't want to hear about where the materials come from or who mined the materials or what the conditions those people are living in that are mining those materials, right? Because it gets in the way of this green energy goal. What people need to understand, right, is the solar panel you have on your roof, the materials that went into that came from someplace, right? And while we should support the jobs in America that are making the panels and the modules, do we think those employees would be comfortable knowing the materials they were working with were mined with forced labor? And for that, people need to get with their members of Congress. They need to enforce the law. This is a law that the Biden administration themselves is responsible for enforcing, and so they're obviously not doing that. So, keep in touch with us. We're at EFTC.org. You can call your member of Congress, call your senator, call the administration. I don't know if anybody there will call you back. But really, people have to understand that, these are tax dollars, right? And if you don't want your tax dollars being supporting, forced labor in China, you need to let your representative know about that.
Yeah. Folks, give him a follow. Check out the website. Bret Manley is an authority on this stuff, and I really appreciate you being here, Bret. Godspeed to you, sir.
Hey, Rich, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You got it. All right, amigos, your thoughts on this and everything else straight ahead. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The core of this is about just practical solutions, common sense solutions. I mean, that's really how I come at most of the things I work on and the things I intend to work on as president.
Yeah.
It's bipartisan. Listen, I plan on having a Republican in my cabinet.
I got a list.
Yes, right. You asked me what's the difference between Joe Biden and me. Well, that will be one of the differences. I'm going to have a Republican in my cabinet because I don't feel burdened by letting pride get in the way of a good idea.
Yeah. Right.
She doesn't feel unburdened by what has been, is what she really means to say. Of course, that is Kamala Harris on The View today, says if she's elected, she's going to appoint a Republican to her cabinet. Now, what I find interesting about this is, of course, which one is it going to be? Adam Kinzinger? Liz Cheney? Does she really have that many to choose from? One of the people that Trump fired? Now, I know that there's some of the critics out there that think, oh, my gosh, sure, she's got nothing. All the Republicans want to be in her cabinet. No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a long line of Republicans that want to do that. Absolutely not. But this is what it is, right? This is how they portray things to make it. Let me tell you something. I can guarantee you. Well, I can't guarantee you, but I think there's a high probability that Elon Musk, who's always been a Democrat, always voted Democrats, there's a good chance of him being involved in the Trump administration. Let me see who else we have here. Oh, yes, RFK Jr. Yep, he's been a Democrat forever. Now he's an independent, but he's a famous Democrat. Who else do we got? Tulsi Gabbard, former vice chair of the Democrat National Committee, former DNC presidential candidate for the 2020 election. She also she's a Democrat, a reform Democrat, if you will. So I think that there's plenty of opportunities for Trump to have a Democrat in his cabinet, in the administration, wherever he chooses to put these people. And what I find interesting is they're out there stumping. I never hear these reports. But the minute that Harris goes on The View and says that that's it, full court press, that's exactly what we're doing. Anyway, let's see what we got here. Let's see, where do we go? Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Yes, sir.
It's always a pleasure. The lineup you started talking about that you have on the show was beyond stellar. It was almost orgasmic.
Oh, boy.
I'm not kidding.
Security.
You had some good stuff going.
Thank you, brother. What's on your mind
the
tonight?
One that gets me the most. Is Kamala. I mean, I don't know how you want to pronounce her name. I call her Kamala. That's what I call her. Well, she's a commie, right? So what are you going to call her? Also, she has another nickname. I don't know if you've heard this one, but it's called the Black Widow.
No, why? Are people dropping dead near her?
Huh. I don't want to be around if that starts happening.
Yeah, me either.
I guess the alternative ain't too good, though, if we're going to have to hang around for it. But,
from your lips to God's ears, brother.
You did mention that she's in up to her neck with the slave labor in China to build everything that they need for their Green New Deal. And she's not the only investor that's in the government. Big old Joey, he's right up to his neck, too. And there's many others. I don't need to get into it. It doesn't take long to figure out who's in and who's out. It's the one that wants to get it done the most has this big stake in it. So it doesn't take long. Anyway.
Yeah. Paul, thanks, brother. The music is here. I appreciate your kind words and your concern about Kamala's communist sympathies and leanings. And I'm going to spend some time on that in the next hour. We're going to talk about communism and Kamala and how she's using some communist mantras. At least that's what Justin Davies is saying, and I've got a clip of him saying it. Folks, Open Phones Across America is coming up right now. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. Our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And some of the things I want to get into, we've been talking about a lot of things tonight, a lot of interesting conversation, really interesting guests, but something that I mentioned in the last segment of the last hour was Kamala Harris's communist ties. Now, one of our callers called in about that, saying, that he called her Kamala, and I thought that was a funny name. But it goes beyond a funny name, right? It goes to so much more. And what I mean by that is there is really a lot that she does and says that really shows how much of this philosophy she espouses, this Marxist philosophy. We know that her dad was a Marxist professor, maybe still is, for all I know. I don't know if he's retired or not, from Stanford University. But what's really interesting, I feel, is the lengths that she will go to, I guess, speak in code. Oh, it's the term the left uses? Dog whistles. Right, she uses communist dog whistles in her speeches. Now, overall, I feel like communists have an agenda, and they've had this agenda for a while. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit. But I want you to hear exactly what she's being accused of here. Chad O. Jackson is a digital creator, and he put together this little clip that I want to play for you because I find it really interesting. And it really juxtaposes some of what she's saying in her rallies with the communist teachings of yesteryear and even modern day. Check this out.
And we are not going back. America is ready for a new way forward. We are not going back. We together will chart a new way forward. We're not going back. Together we'll move forward.
We're not going back. Forward together. Folks, this has literally been the slogan of the Communist Party for the past 10 years. I'm not even joking. If you go to the Communist Party USA's website, 3 years ago, Communist co-chair Rosanna Cambron literally wrote an article titled, "We're Not Going Back, Forward Together." Rosanna is a communist through and through, and she's unashamed of it.
That's how we communists work. This is how you build that movement that's going to be the massive movement that we need to topple capitalism.
It's not a coincidence that this just so happens to be Kamala Harris's campaign slogan, nor did she plagiarize it from the Communist Party. Communists have long acted as the kind of ideological undergird of the Democrat Party here in the United States, and Kamala Harris is just a continuation of that.
Together we'll move forward.
Again, for the past decade, communists have been giving speeches all over the country where they have the banner, "We're not going back," plastered behind them.
Chicago has produced more outstanding communist leaders maybe than any other place around in a lot of ways.
So this begs the question. Do you continue to pretend that Kamala Harris is not influenced by communist ideology?
Are we going to continue to pretend that Kamala Harris is not influenced by communist ideology? Well, I want to get your thoughts on that, but I also want to play for you a file clip that we have. And Count Delacula, what is the slug on that? Here's a communist video from 1964. This is as file footage gets. Check this out.
The communists developed the third phase of their blueprint for world domination: neutralize the opposition.
We can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn toward those who disagree with us.
A Communist Party directive issued in 1943 reads,
Members and front organizations must continually embarrass, discredit, and degrade our critics. When obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. Constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
There you have it. Now, For those of you who are thinking, Rich, you think you're coming with receipts, but you're just making stuff up. You're pulling some McCarthy stuff here. Red Scare. Yeah? Well, how about what some of the people in the media are doing today? Are you going to say you've never heard them call Trump Hitler? I've got a bunch of clips from today of that actually happening. Folks on CNN and MSNBC taking things extremely out of context to put it into their context, which is what he just said. Continually degrading your opponent. So I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm going to play those other clips of audio for you straight ahead. But this is an interesting thing, right? This is a very interesting thing where I come from. So keep it locked right here. I'm going to come right back, play those clips for you, and then we're going to get to some of your calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Count Dalicula, let that beat play for a second. That's some good stuff you got there. Wow. Midnight Vibe. It's like a music show right here. All right, America, welcome back. It's the Music Vibe Show with Count Dalicula and me, Rich Valdez. And we're going to talk about a little Communism 101 over here. We've got Lawrence O'Donnell, who's criticizing Trump for saying something tonight. And you've got Aisha, what's her name? Aisha Mills, also criticizing Trump for something he said tonight. And that comes as no surprise, right? El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, gets criticized a lot, pretty often. But I want you to hear what he said, because they're trying to make this into another one of those Charlottesville moments, and it's just not. Listen to El Trumpito talking about bad genes.
When you look at the things that she proposes, they're so far off. She has no clue. How about allowing people to come through an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers? Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States.
Now, we're going to pause it right there. He said 13,000 of which are murderers and are now living in the United States. Murderers. Play the tape.
Murderer, I believe this. It's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. They left. They had 425,000 people coming.
Again, before he wraps up, there's only a few seconds left. He just said, murderers, and I believe this, it's in their genes. And we've got a lot of bad genes. Why? Because there was a report that just came out that said we let in a bunch of convicted murderers across the border. I think that makes tons of sense, right? Again, here's the quote. Well, anyway, finish the clip.
Into our country that shouldn't be here, that are criminals. And you know, one of the worst stats, 325,000 young children are missing.
So, just to be clear here, Trump says, you know, a murderer, and I believe this, it's in their genes. And we've got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. And somehow, when he's talking about murderers having bad genes, they try to turn this into something else. Listen to what Lawrence O'Donnell had to say about this.
Donald Trump said today that he believes that immigrants to this country are genetically inferior human beings. That is exactly what Adolf Hitler thought and said. Donald Trump doesn't seem to remember that he is a descendant of immigrants to this country, including his mother, who was an immigrant. 2 of the mothers of Donald Trump's children are immigrants. Donald Trump said today, quote, "We've got a lot of bad genes in our country right now." And again, that is almost word for word what Adolf Hitler was saying in the 1930s before he started World War II and before he started an organized extermination program of the Jewish people, in which Adolf Hitler's ambition was to execute every living Jewish person he could find anywhere in Europe.
So now Lawrence O'Donnell is going off the deep end, right? And you might say, oh, come on, Rich, now you're just carrying Trump's water. No, I'm looking at the facts. Trump has been president before. Newsflash. Breaking news. Donald Trump spent 4 years in the White House. Not once did he exterminate a Jew. Not once did he threaten democracy. Not once. So now, why am I to believe that now he's going to try and kill Jews? Now, obviously, this is fake, it's phony, and it's fraud. But here's the thing. What really bothers me about this is that Trump says it when he says it. Now, you know, a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes. And we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now. The context of the conversation is a recent ICE report that confirms that the Biden-Harris administration let in over 13,000 known convicted murderers. That's not an inference. He says it in the tape that I played for you. That's true. That's a DHS report. And somehow the media uses this to say that he wants to exterminate people like Hitler killed Jews. I mean, talk about conflating something. This is not even close to what he's saying. This is a hoax. This is fake. This is phony, and it's fraud. All right, and this happened yesterday. He said this yesterday. They're saying this today on CNN and MSNBC. Aisha Mills went on to say that Trump, his bad genes comment, would absolutely try to exterminate an entire group of people. Listen to this.
And when he uses language like this, I don't think that it's a Freudian slip. I think that the danger of a Donald Trump is that he would absolutely try to exterminate an entire group of people because he thinks that their genes are somehow different than his and faulty. And I say this with all the sternness that you hear in my voice because it is serious, and Americans should recognize that.
Listen, stern voice Aisha Mills. His genes are different than these people and superior and better, right? And so are yours, I would hope. And so are mine, I would hope. We should all have superior genes to murderers. Isn't that the idea behind life, that we don't go killing people? Thou shalt not kill. He's talking about murderers from foreign countries that have snuck into our country, and we knew they were murderers and let them in anyway. Either you're not as bright as you purport to be, or at least appear to be, or you're trying to get one over on us. You're trying to bamboozle the American people. Which one is it, Miss Mills? Which one is it, Mr. O'Donnell? This type of behavior, in my opinion, is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. But this is what people do. This is why people don't trust the media. Because they lie. They spin things. They try to confuse people like my buddy Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina, and others that call here that hate Trump. You know, they wake up loving people and they go to sleep hating Trump. Why? Because the media told them to hate Trump. And it just feeds them one lie after the next. And listen, I don't see anybody else doing that but MSNBC, CNN, the Democrat Party, right? I don't hate Kamala Harris. I just say she's really bad. I think her policies stink. I think Tim Walz is full of crap. But that's it. That's the extent of my critique of them. Don't vote for them, and please don't lead my country. I don't want you anything in the leadership of my country. I don't want you having anything to do with it. But with Donald Trump, it's let's put him in jail. With Donald Trump, it's, oh, I'm sorry they missed. Who on earth talks like that? Why on earth do people talk like that? Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, I want to grab your calls. I want to get your thoughts on this because, well, that's what we do here. We talk about it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And let's see. Where do we go? We've got calls from all over the place. Is anybody on topic with this? Let's see. That's my thinking voice. Let's go to Norma, Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Norma, go right ahead.
Hello. I'm just angry that they're loading their own pockets full of dough. And they're pushing in this government now that's really controlling people's income. Like most of the people coming here think they're coming to a free country. They're not. And they can run all over the world. I feel travel restricted. I feel my freedom. Everybody wants your email address now, even the federal government.
I hate
at
giving
the post
that out.
office. And that's how they bust into your phone, I heard. But even the schools are asking for your email. And it's getting to be a requirement now that you have to have. You know what? I don't even want a phone, and you'll probably be happy when I don't have one. But
no,
I like to keep it. I like to keep it on stupid, and I just don't like my phone telling me what to do.
I hear you, Norma. And you know what? You're not alone. There's a lot of people that are in the same boat that feel the same way you do, that want to keep things very simple. I know more and more of them. Some of them are just slightly older than me. And they're saying things like, let's just go back to carburetor engines. Let's go back to roll-up windows. Let's go back to kids playing until the sun goes down, right? Until the streetlights come on. I'm hearing a lot of people that want a simpler version of life because the one we have today is too complex. And I'll agree. If you have a car, the newer your car is, the more perplexing it is. There's so many sensors and bells and whistles and things going on in cars today that weren't a thing before. Whereas some people are getting service done on their car, and it's like, wow, I didn't even know that those things broke. Why? Because a lot of cars didn't have them years ago. So I get it. I get where you're at. Some people only want to use flip phones. Some people don't want to use any phone at all. Want to go back to pay phones and carrying quarters. Okay, I got it. Listen, I embrace technology as much as I can. It's overwhelming for me at times, like two-factor authentication. Absolute insanity. I hate this, having to get an email or check in on my phone just for my safety and security. I feel pretty safe. I can protect myself. I don't need two factors of authentication, but I have to use it. Anyway, Norma, thanks for your call. Folks, I want to really get your thoughts on this, on Kamala Harris and her communist ways and the media trashing Trump, saying the bad genes. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Coming right back.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Now, we have been driving around Davis Island all day today, and we've been trying to find crews cleaning up. And we found one group of maybe 6 some odd people doing the best they could. But honestly, it just does not seem like we are going to be able to clean up Davis Island quick enough. Governor Ron DeSantis was even saying earlier today that he had a concern with Hillsborough County and how much cleaning up they would be able to do. You think about the projectiles, you think about everything in the storm surge water and what could be floating about and going about here. It's not just the drywall and the wood. It's also, we ran into sofas, recliners, pool tables. There's a lot of stuff still out here, and we just don't know if they're going to be able to clear it.
Okay, so there you have the report on what's going on with the hurricane. That's Evan Klosky from WTSP-TV, Channel 10 in Tampa Bay, Davis Island, Florida. That's on the shores of Tampa Bay. And the Hurricane Milton, soon to be Category 5, is getting closer and people are likely losing the battle to clean up the debris from Helene. And this is of concern, right? Because rarely do you see Floridians really get concerned over hurricanes. Most of the time, they're like, come on. It's what we do every September, every October. But I see a lot of people getting somewhat concerned about this. So I want to talk about the hurricane. Any of your thoughts on that? Of course, Kamala Harris and her communist views, the distortion of President Trump's words, and everything else that we talked about tonight, including the Space Force and all the other great topics we had. But let's hit the phones. Before we go to Illinois, to WLS Country, I want to check in with Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina on WTMA. Jerome, go right ahead.
That's right, Rich. You keep picking on poor little sweet defenseless Jerome who wouldn't harm a fly, okay? You keep doing that. I heard what you said about me, but all I know is, hey, ask Laura Ingraham a question for me. How much did Fox have to pay out for lying for Trump? And
I don't know how to work for Fox.
$780 million. I got the math for you. I'm pretty good at math. $780 million, and they did it because they didn't want to go to court because they would have lost even more than that. Why does he keep lying about the relief efforts being done by the government? El Stupido. You call him El Trumpido. I call him El Stupido.
Now, what is El Trumpito lying about, in your opinion?
He keeps saying that they're not doing anything. They help the relief efforts for the people that got hit by the hurricanes. He's a liar. The governors of those states are saying, no, they've been great to us. Why does he keep lying?
Well, I think, Jerome, what's going on here is that he was on the ground last week, and he made those comments on Monday, right? And I don't mean yesterday. I mean, last week. And he made additional comments yesterday. So he's basing his comments on when he pulled up to Valdosta, Georgia, with a tanker, a gasoline tanker, and a bunch of pallets of water, and was giving out supplies to the people that were ravaged by the hurricane, Helene. Now they're preparing for a new hurricane. So it makes all the sense in the world to me that Joe Biden has been in touch with, let's say, Ron DeSantis. But Ron DeSantis himself said that he had not been in touch with Kamala Harris, that nobody had called him. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was out there complaining, saying that, that nobody had involved her and nobody talked to her. And I'm thinking to myself, if I were Governor DeSantis or governor from any state, I wouldn't want to talk to Kamala Harris either. Why would I if I could talk to Joe Biden? Joe Biden said, I gave him my cell phone number, my personal cell phone number. So if you have direct access to the president of the United States, who's in charge of FEMA and everything else that you may need in a natural disaster, why on earth would you want to talk about or talk to que mala eres? Now, so if Trump is on the ground and he's pulling up with a gasoline truck and he's pulling up with water and pallets and other supplies, and he's not looking to speak with Kamala Harris and he doesn't see her on the ground, if he makes a comment and says, hey, I don't see Kamala Harris anywhere around here, how is that a lie, Jerome?
Are the governors of those states lying about what Biden and the vice president are doing?
I haven't heard any governor say that Kamala Harris is on the ground bringing gasoline tankers and doing what Trump's doing. So I haven't heard Trump say any lies. Where's the lie?
The federal response by the government. Are they lying about that?
I think you're lying about it.
Oh, there you go, picking on me again. That's all right. Hey, but that's okay.
You sound like you could hold your own.
Yeah. Oh, I can. Don't worry about me. Hey, I might be sweet, but I'm tough. I got part of my mom and part of my dad.
I love it.
My dad was tough and my mom was sweet. So hey.
Listen, you could be as sweet as you want to be. I love it. You're a sweetheart. Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Thank you, brother. And yes, I can't wait till next month. What are we, 20-something days, 30-something days? I can't wait. 27 days. This is going to be exciting. Let us continue. Where do we go from here? We go to Neil, Arlington Heights, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Valdez.
Yes, sir.
The corrupt media has been lying and spinning President Trump's words for 9 years now, ever since he descended from that escalator in Trump Towers and announced his candidacy as a Republican. The latest example is Mr. O'Donnell. Trump referred to murderers, and Mr. O'Donnell substitutes one word, and he calls them migrants. Trump never said anything about migrants. In the same manner as several years ago, if you remember, during Trump's more than several years ago, when he imposed sanctions on terrorist nations, what did the media say? Oh, he's imposing sanctions on Muslim countries.
Right.
No. And so they continued to lie, and all they have to do is change one word and set everybody on fire, and that's the way the corrupt media is, which is why I've stopped listening to them, because I have no faith. This is no longer a free press. This is a propaganda machine, and as far as I'm concerned, the Democrats have turned into modern-day communistas, and that will never work. And that's basically all I have to say. Thank you very much. I enjoy your program. Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. Really good feedback, and I agree with you. I think the media has been under some sort of spell from commies and the left for a long time, and it's only gotten worse. And Mark Levin, the great one, Mark Levin, one of my radio mentors, he wrote an excellent book on this called Unfreedom of the Press, and in it he describes how we got to this place, how the whole thing happened. With this activist journalism and how it came about. And he breaks it down to actually a couple of people that actually brought this about. And it's a great read, and I recommend it to everybody. But it's very eye-opening because it gives you the mechanics behind just going, it's a bunch of lefties in the media. It's really way more sinister and way bigger than that. There are people that are not only avowed Marxists that left higher education, but got into higher education to teach journalism students in J school, to form their opinions and to teach them about this activism journalism, where it's about creating a social change, not about reporting unbiased news. And this big change, happened, I guess, probably close to the turn of the century and evolved from there and really took root, I guess, 40s, 50s, 60s. And we're seeing the fruit of that now, and it's scary. It's scary to see that people have really abandoned ship on telling a story and decided to create a story. Very scary times. Neil in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Thank you, sir. Shout out to WLS. And we're going to come back with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. We got calls from Montana, Michigan, Nevada, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
What do you think would be the biggest specific difference between your presidency and a Biden presidency?
Well, we're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead.
Guess what? Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. Breaking news. Unbelievable. This woman is so articulate, so profound, so deep. The things she says. I want to continue our conversation with you guys. We're going to start the speed round early because we got a lot of people, and I want to make sure everybody gets on. Let's see. Where do we go? Let's see. Let's go to John, Reno, Nevada, streaming the show from Pittsburgh, KDKA. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Rich. I wanted to talk about the corrupt media's double standard in reporting things. If it wasn't for Fox News and the New York Post, a lot of stories about the Democrats would never see the light of day. Kamala's husband, Doug Emhoff, he had an affair with the nanny. He was a very sexist, aggressive flirter in a sexist law firm, and he slapped an ex-girlfriend at the Cannes Film Festival. He would have been canceled if he was a Republican. As a Democrat, he's in line to be the first man.
Yeah, well, as a Democrat, he is the epitome of masculinity. I think that somebody called him that recently, Jen Psaki or somebody like that. Yeah, you're right. There's been a double standard for anything. And what's interesting is this doesn't even go around party lines, but typically does. They really, it's whether they like you or not. Whether you're one of the cool kids or not depends on whether you get to sit at their lunch table. And if they don't want you at their lunch table, they begin to destroy. Attack and destroy. Attack and destroy. It's like that 1964 clip with all the crackling audio in the back that I played for you of the communists saying we have to continually attack our opponent to get people to hate them. And that's what they do. And they will sit there and try and get you to despise Trump to the point where people will just repeat that. I hate him. I don't know. I can't do it. I can't stomach the guy. Never met the guy. They never given him a chance. Listen, I there's a lot of people in politics that I don't like and I can't stand, but I give them a fair chance. I really do. But sometimes if somebody tells you for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years what they're going to do, and then they get elected and they do it, you don't need to give them much more of a chance because you've already given them the benefit of the doubt and they proved you right. And I think that's what's happening. And yeah, this stuff with Kamala's husband, I don't know what the story is, honestly. I read about it, that he smacked his girlfriend when they were on vacation in Cannes, and I hope that it's inaccurate. I hope that he's not a violent guy. I hope that he's not smacking her around. I really do. I hope that the guy got whatever help he needs. If it is indeed true, nobody wants that to be the case. But you're right. Had it been someone else on the Republican side, they'd have a field day, right? We'd be all tarred and feathered for the same exact thing. John in Reno, thanks for the call, my brother. Shout out to KDKA. And let us continue here. Where do I want to go? I want to go to Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go for it.
Good evening, my radio amigo. Let me tell you, you stole some of my thunder, Rich, but it was such an important thing you said. I'm going to repeat it. There was 13,000 murderers were allowed into this country under Harris and Biden. 10,000 convicted rapists were allowed into this country under their rule. And 300,000 plus children are not accounted for. And if you broke it down and said just 1% were being abused sexually, that's over 3,000 children under the Biden-Harris administration. Good night, Rich.
Outstanding. Knocking it out of the park. You're right. This is a travesty. It's a shame. Whatever happened to the campaign where they were saying, send back our girls or find our girls or bring back our girls, right? When there were some missing Nigerian girls missing and they were making the case that nobody cared because they were Nigerian. Well, guess what? All these kids that are missing are of color and nobody cares. Nobody gives a blank. I'm with you, Ken. Very, very well put. I'm going to pause right here. We're going to come right back for calls from Montana, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to Montana. KOFI, Al in Kalispell. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, I'll be real fast. The new slur campaign, Trump is anti-Semitic. 1, Trump moved American embassy to Jerusalem. This shows world support, our support worldwide for Israel. 2, Trump gave his daughter's hand to Jared Kushner, an openly practicing everyday yarmulke-wearing Jew. I mean, where are they coming up with this stuff? That's crazy.
But, listen, there's no shortage of misinformation and disinformation out there. And what's funny is when you are on the left, misinformation and disinformation is basically things that you don't agree with, right? If you don't agree, that's misinformation. When you're not on the left, that's basically just called free speech, right? Or a difference of opinion. And that's what these people do. They lie and they lie and they lie some more. Al in Kalispell, Montana, thank you for your call. KOFI in the building, and you're right. Trump, the last thing Trump is, I think, is an anti-Semite. But those are my thoughts. What are you going to do? I believe the guy is on the level. Let's continue. I want to go to, where do we go here? I want to go to Robert, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. Yesterday evening, you were talking with Mr. Cohen about why people who are planning horribly violent things can't be arrested or held behind bars or prevented from doing those things. Well, the answer is because under our legal system, it's very, very difficult to if a person hasn't done anything yet, and a lot of these guys have clear records, to put them behind bars and keep them there for a very long period of time. It's almost impossible. I studied law in Germany under Professor.
Well, yeah, even if you studied law in the United States, Robert, you can't put somebody in jail for something you think they're going to do unless you can prove that they're conspiring to do it. And conspiracy is not always easy to prove. So I get it. I don't know. Well, the conversation I had with Elkanah Cohen was around Iran and the October 7th war. So I don't remember that part of the conversation, but I do appreciate it. And you're right. You just can't put people in jail for things you think they're going to do. That's the equivalent of a red flag law. When they say we're taking your gun away because we think you might do this or we think you might do that, that's not cool. And it's not how it works. Robert in Charleston, South Carolina, thank you, sir, for participating in the speed round. Let us go to James in Conway, South Carolina, WRNN. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, thank you so much, man. I'm going to make this fast. And going off your last guy you just talked to, I served in the military. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division. Thank you, sir. But since then, I'm in a legal practice now. I've done that, but the small time I served was from 1999 to 2003. Okay. I was part of a lot of things. I saw a lot of stuff. I was part of that whole Kosovo debacle, which and it's actually not a debacle, but there are so many similarities to Kosovo to Ukraine. I would love to speak to you more about that.
Well, I would recommend the next time you hear we talk about it on the radio, call in and we could probably dig into it a little bit. But how did you want to leave off on this? We only have a few more seconds to go.
Yeah, okay. And the second thing now I want to talk about was the insurrection. Now, years ago, 2000, the Bush-Gore election, a lot of people think that the only insurrection or the only time anything like this ever happened was when Biden was taken over from Trump. I was an airborne soldier. We got word from when Bush was being elected, he had won over Gore. We heard. We trained up basically, and we were going.
James, I'm sorry, brother. Gotta leave it there. I appreciate it. It was getting good. The story, folks. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Joe in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Thank you for your call, my brother. Don't go anywhere. We're coming back mañana.